So what do you do to keep like because the focus a lot of times with people like this is on the aesthetics. Like they want to look better and they want to look better now. And of course, acutely when you lose body fat, you're going to look a little better. So how and so the emphasis is always like on the look. So when you're in a gaining phase, obviously you're not going to see massive changes acutely. So what do you guys do for strategy or have them, let's say, focus elsewhere on? Like what are those things they should be focusing on instead of like just the acute look, if you will?
I try to have people focus on their training and seeing the numbers going up and just try to shift their focus to that. And I also, if they're doing too many physique checks, try to get them to cut that out. I'm sure I know you guys do that as well. And then if there are body parts that are looking better in the gaining phase, I have them focus on that. It's like, I don't know, like if they've been wanting to have bigger arms and like we're going through this gaining phase and their gut's getting a little bigger, but their arms are also getting bigger. I'm just like, dude, look at your arms a little more. Like, look at the things that are going well. Um, Probably those are probably my top things is just trying to shift their focus to the training, not doing too many physique checks, actually just focusing on the things that are looking better because of this gaining phase. And then I guess just the basic of like remembering the long term and like why you're investing in this, like try to see 24 months down the road where this is going to end up. And like you said, a lot of people, I think once they come to us, have already been through like this cut cycle so many times that they know that that's not working. And so the reason they reached out is because they wanted to do something different that actually was going to work. So
There is. I think people. So I think sometimes people lose sight of. I guess because most of the people we get, it's like they've gotten to the point where they can get their butts in the gym and they can do that on a pretty consistent basis. And people forget that, hey, you know what, that took a, you had to make it through like that first filter when it comes to like gym rat hood to get it to that point. Because I still remember like early on in my training, like it was sometimes a battle to make that third day, you know, going to the gym. Like I remember just being in the couch and being like, you know what, I'll go at 5, and then 5 turned into 7, and to me it was, I had to make some progress before I guess it was easier for me to make it my thing, because you know I got some rewards already, and it's like, okay, like this is worth peeling myself off the couch and getting my butt to the gym. So a lot of our folks, they're already at that point where it's like, okay, they're consistent gym goers, but with fat loss, it's like, again, it's like that's the next filter where it's like, okay, like there's this next thing we have to do, and in order for you to look the way you ultimately do, it's going to involve some muscle gain. And with the muscle gain, yeah, there's going to be, like you said, Jeff, like that place where it's like 3 to 4 months post starting the gaining phase where you're like, all I know is that I've gotten fatter, I've gotten a little bit stronger, and I'm further away from my ultimate goal, or at least it feels that way. And if you can make it like beyond that 3 to 4 month phase and roughly double the time gaining, you know, like have yourself like 8-ish months of like, hey, good consistent gaining where you're not as meticulous as fat loss, but a lot of the order is still in place. That's where you get rewarded. And it always surprises me, like how many people have never even tried that maneuver yet. It's like you haven't even given it really a fair chance. And like right around that 3 to 4 month mark is where like things will come up, excuses that they can think of, like whether it's like Steve said, a vacation, or it's getting warm outside, or I've even had people that like, hey man, like it's like the holidays and I'm going to be around my family and I want them to see that, hey, like this is working. So you start to find all these little scapegoats as to like why we should press that fat loss button. And again, to just kind of give the demographic that we work with like some credit here, because I feel like we're just pounding away on when it comes to some folks, because this story here happens to be, I think, like at least a third of the people that I deal with, they come from like this sort of scenario. It's for the average person, like they don't know how to lose fat. It's like they'll try this diet, they'll try this sort of way of working out. When you know what makes like what creates fat loss, what induces fat loss, like it's literally just a button, and it's really hard. It takes a lot of discipline to not press that button. and like I'll remind them of that. It's like, hey, that's the difference between you and everyone else. It's like, you know exactly how to lose fat. It's just like, is this the right time right now relative to your long-term goals? And one thing about like being in that gaining phase and like not bailing out early is that you get used to your look eventually. You know, like right around that 3 or 4 month mark, you're like, ooh, it just the spots that we don't like, they tend to get worse. If you can just go a little bit further, eventually you get very accustomed to the outfit you're wearing, and it bothers you less. And like you said, Steve, at that point you've been gaining long enough where like performance metrics have gone up significantly to the point where you're like, oh, okay, like there's some cool things that happen during non-fat loss phases.
Like I can speak to that personally because like when my body weight gets around 190 plus, that's where I kind of have that look, Berto, where I'm like, okay, yeah, it's looking a little doughy here, a little soft. But my emphasis starts to go more into the, like Steve said, the training performance. So I look more forward to the gym than I do looking in the mirror. And so what I try to do personally is I look less in the mirror. And as far as like attire, like I'll just cover myself up more. And I try to put my mind frame into an athlete's perspective. Like if you look at any sport across the board, it's like, yeah, maybe they care about how they look, but it's more about how they perform. Like that's what their intention is, like powerlifting, right? Like intention is to move weight, not to look shredded in a singlet. So that's kind of how my mindset is when I get deep into an off season. I kind of just drift away from that mirror a little bit, and I focus more on the performance, the intention on performance. And also like again, like looking at the guy on the beach, I kind of think of that guy and go, okay, if that guy's out there with his shirt off, enjoying life, then that means I need to work more on how I feel about myself internally, like true happiness. So those are the things I try to work on. It's not perfect because I still have moments just like any other human out there with some imperfections and some insecurity around how I look. But it's gotten a lot better over the years. And the more I've like been in this body, been in the off-season body, like you said, Berto, it's easier to start embracing and accepting it. And kind of realizing too, like if you look hard enough out there on social media, there's a lot of guys out there, like you say, their training clips or whatnot, you know, they got round faces, you know, they're not etched out like Skeletor, you know, so it's definitely normal to have some body fat on you, you know, when your goal is to put on some muscle. And I think that in a nutshell is like what we're kind of saying here is just like to try to normalize it. It's okay to have some body fat on you. It's not a negative. I think it's just like if you think about the day and age we live in, right? Like this, it's a sport. Like bodybuilding is a sport, you know. And you go back to the caveman days, and you don't want to walk around at 10% body fat or 8% because, man, you might be struggling a little bit, you know, trying to just hang on to life. So I think it's just the fact that we're in a normalized civilization that, hey, we're supposed to have abs, you know, that's normal when maybe it's not.
That's such a big one, Jeff, what you were saying about the attire. Like that's so huge is like when we're in a gaining phase to get clothes that actually fit a gaining phase. Because I've seen that become an issue is like just if somebody doesn't like, if they keep trying to squeeze into like their clothes and they were 10, 20 pounds lighter, like that only makes the whole thing worse. But like you're saying, if you find the right clothes to go with it, if you buy clothes that fit the phase, then you feel way better about how you look because you don't feel like you're trying to like squeeze into some tiny thing and like,
I see,
you know,
yeah.
like
Like
parts of your body are showing. And
like you feel like a failure because my large shirts don't fit no more, right? And you put them on, you're like, it doesn't look good. Well, go buy an extra large.
Yeah, and then you put it on and like it actually fits, and you're like, okay, it actually looks, I look fine.
I have two sets of, I have two wardrobes in a sense because I have my off-season wardrobe and I have contest prep wardrobe. So I have pants that are like 33, 32s. I have pants that are actually 30. And those don't get worn too often. Trust me. It's like only when I'm like extremely lean. And the thing about being extremely lean is like, yeah, you kind of look really fit in your clothes. You know, people will say, wow, you're in great shape. But internally, you're like, yeah, but I feel like shit more than I feel good, you know, because I'm hungry, I'm food focused, my training isn't, you know, what it could be, I'm not recovering well. My kids, you know, they're like, is dad going to be happy today or is he unhappy today? So it's like on the outside, it looks great, but on the inside, it's not always the most pleasant thing.